alpha here. This is part 2 of the actual chapter 12 because the other part of the video clearly wasn't long enough. So I'm gonna make another part of this. And much more specifically, this was the part wherein they were getting inside quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 is the rail of the custodians, but what if quadrants are actually divisions or categories of rails? For example, quadrant 1 is like the main one, which is quadrant 1 is probably Antaria. The quadrant 2 is the alpha and the infected's Relo. The quadrant 3 is the actual video game Relos, and the quadrant 4, which is probably the custodian Relos. But I could be wrong, and because it's just a theory. But what if that's actually just Relo categories to make them easier to find? But let's see. This part we're in, like, Darius, Brittany, Mary, and Michelle go inside the Relo, the Arxis, and actually get into the custodian's Relo. The custodian's Relo might be a bit different than we actually thought it would originally be. This is the Relo of the custodians, which is quadrant 4, by the way.
These aren't the custodians. Those are infected. Survived the Great War. Now.
No help's coming to Shiloh and the others.
So probably the Great War is actually the fight of the custodians and the infected, and the alphas and the infected. But I could be wrong, and it's a theory. Because it's still a theory. But what if? But they actually survived the Great War. But how would they actually be infected that quickly? How would they be actually infected if they have been protecting their own homeworld for like thousands and thousands and thousands of years already? So there could be another reason behind it, which probably lies in the end of this video's actual thing, which is probably hidden right in the end of this video, right over here. Sorry if you had to watch this. You can actually skip it if you want. Before you guys get confused, this is actually the Alpha Sword, and it's a little bit more different than the original sword, because you'll see in the end. So like, I guess you can watch the whole transformation of Shiloh turning to an Alpha, but I'm not gonna put it in there. You can just watch it from the link in the description, this whole video here. But yes, that is an Alpha sword.
That sword came from an Alpha. An Alpha got sword into the water supply, infecting the system with water zombies. That's why they don't have an Alpha.
But why here?
Those who forgot about this one is the place where the scientists kept the captured Alpha. And this is the actual diagram of the sword and what this scientists think it actually does.
You're experimenting on a captured Alpha. Water zombies.
Nothing we have can destroy that sword. What's the plan?
Grab the sword and become the Alpha.
before the scientist continues, I would just like to make you guys think. What actually happened to the alpha after it vanished? In my theory is that other than the fact that she escaped, she didn't go back to her original horde. Because I think as an alpha, you actually have a lot of powers other than just turning people into an infected from being a survivor. So that means probably that alpha has an ability to use its actual power to like have a war with the custodians, even though it's not completely, the lore is not completely supporting my theories, but I just think that the alpha teleported to the quadrant 4 where the custodians were actually are, and she actually made a lot of infected and using her its actual alpha ability. So what if that's the case? That would be actually hard for the Shiloh and Bros team to overcome, but I think they can actually they can actually defeat the Alpha by that way. But I just think that the Alphas, they have a lot more power than we think. In my perspective, I just think they had a lot more abilities than we think they do have right now. So like, this is the next part wherein like the scientist continued to explain and Elijah trying to stop her, but then
They genetically have a spot for one. If you become the alpha, you have full control over the zombies.
and yes, by full control, it means you can control every single zombie. Just like Beatrice and Michelle, they actually control the infected, and actually made it use again, made them do what they actually wanted to do on their own favor. So it's kind of like an actual plot twist to this series of events. But I was actually thinking also, where are all the alphas girls? I mean, like, Michael was going to be supposedly the alpha because they voted for him to be one, but he didn't agree to it. So that's why Shiloh became the alpha instead to save the others. But what if Micah actually agreed to it? Then that was the first guy that turned into one. That was the first male to become an alpha ever. Because if we remembered from one of those previous clips, Micah was supposed to be the alpha. But he didn't agree to it, so Shiloh just turned one.
Shiloh, the zombie virus corrupts. You want to be you.
And yes, it actually corrupts. You wouldn't actually have full control over your mind, and you could just be having a lot of thoughts of taking over the different railroads. And also, when Shiloh actually turned into an alpha, Elijah had to like shot her with a cure. But I have a theory. What if the cure never worked and it's just used to stun her?